Welcome to the Across the Bar podcast, where we talk about why today's headlines are important for your success at work. My name is Peter Rahbar, and I'm your first call on legal issues.
And I'm Laura Brounstein. I should be your first call on comms and content. And if you are Pam Bondi, you probably need to be calling someone for a little help on comms right at this moment.
And maybe
Segue.
legal advice? I don't know. Probably not. I'm
She
I'm
was
just pull.
Was she wrongly terminated? What?
No.
Why was Pam Bondi terminated?
I'm just pulling myself together here. The news just came across right before we came on air. Had a huge breakdown. Now I've composed myself, and here you are bringing it up again.
You're verklempt.
Oh God, poor Pam. Poor
What do you
Pam.
think, like for Gnome, I deeply believe it was that expensive ad campaign that finally did her in. What do you think finally did in Bondi?
We'll never know, but the president had a very bad day yesterday. First of all, he went to the Supreme Court and his lawyer was humiliated by the justices, including the ones he appointed.
I
And he
also
was,
kind of feel like he must have had like courtroom PTSD,
yeah.
like,
So
yeah.
he probably blamed her for that, even though that's not her fault. And then he gave another clunker of a speech on a very important topic. And so, I think, yeah, I think, when he does stuff like this, it's purely to like change the topic off things that are bad for him and get people talking about something else. So that's my theory. Like, she probably didn't do anything, but he probably blames her for the court thing, if I had to guess.
Or do you think it's just like Etsy witches, just like ticking off boxes?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll hear if the Etsy witches were involved, I don't know. Maybe it's Epstein.
Etsy
Who knows?
On as a guest. Oh my God, that would be so interesting.
I'm not going to have any witches on the podcast. The podcast is on a positive trajectory. I don't need to,
Are you saying
impact
Wiccans
that.
are not positive? Wiccans are
I
positive.
mean, okay.
Did you never see Charmed?
No, that was not a show of mine. Charms. No.
It's a really good
Sorry.
show. Really good
Yeah.
show. R.I.P. Shannon.
All right. Well, Pam, have fun in the important new job in the private sector, whatever that is. She doesn't even get a soft landing. She just gets the full boot.
Yeah, well, they talked about a soft landing for her, supposedly, but it is not.
No,
Look,
that's
maybe
not what the
judged
statement
it.
says.
Yeah.
The statement says she'll be transitioning to a much needed and important new job in the private sector. Okay.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
And,
It's rough.
obviously, I have no love lost on Pam Bondi, and I certainly didn't on Christine Ohm. But it can't go without notice that he only really likes to fire women.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
And fine. That's your viewpoint. You're allowed to say it.
Yeah. You don't think so?
He's obviously sexist and racist, so that's that's obvious. I don't think we need to dig around to prove
Really?
it. Like, it's true.
In that? Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
And I think we should just stop talking about Christine Ohm before this conversation strays somewhere else. So let's just stop it right there. What else are we talking about this week?
Oh, I see what you're saying. You know what? That poor man. I don't want to kink shame anybody. That poor man. Okay, so we are going to talk about Pam Bondi. It's not the only one facing instability in the current job market. We're going to talk about two big companies who are handling things very different ways. Starbucks and Oracle. We are going to talk about whether joy is dead at work, whether there was any joy, and if the economy is growing anywhere. What the bejesus is going on at UPenn, and another bad week for the now former CEO of Air Canada. Peter, do you want to
Quite a
start there?
lineup.
You called that out last week. You were like, oh, this is not going to go well for this guy.
Yeah, well, obviously, there was a crash involving an Air Canada jet in New York a week ago. It seems like a month ago. The news cycle is crazy. But the Canadian CEO in a country with two official languages only gave a statement regarding the accident and a tribute to the pilots in English, which caused immediate outrage from all angles of Canadian civilization. And this week he resigned over the backlash. I mean, to me, a complete comms nightmare, which you could address. But from a legal perspective, again, we talked about this last week in a different context. You know, CEOs and other executives have clauses in their contracts that say if you do something that brings the company into public disrepute, you could be gone. We could fire you.
So
You know, they probably negotiated something here.
That put his company in a bad light.
I mean, a tremendous lack of judgment.
Yes.
You know, and for anyone who's
what people get away with these days, like, I gotta just say, like, look at what is going on in the bad behavior coming out of so many corner offices. It's amazing.
I'm glad you said that. I am glad you said that, because I will take this opportunity to bring up a point I wanted to weave into the podcast.
Oh, yeah, weave what?
Which is, there's a very different thing going on in America right now than the rest of the world. Okay. And Canadians happen to have a reputation that is very well deserved of being respectful, kind people. They are. I love visiting Canada.
I'm going next week. Can't wait.
Yeah. Where are you going?
Vancouver.
Ooh, nice. And so the standard there is very different. And by the way, it's an official language. Like, I mean, it's disrespectful to the French speaking, and this is the national airline, right? I mean, so comparing him to a US CEO is not, that's apples to oranges. And I will say, I was talking to a client last week.
So are you saying this wouldn't have happened in the US? Because I don't think it would have happened in the US.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't. You know, maybe not. You know, it would depend if there were other things that the board was unhappy with regarding the CEO, and if this was just an opportunity that they would take, you know, then great. I will tell you, though, I have a lot of clients who are based outside the country, C-suite executives. I was talking to one this week who's...
the country mostly?
No, who are legitimately working elsewhere. Some of them are American, some are not. But I had a client who's in the running for a very prominent C-suite job in the U.S., and they told me they are probably not going to take it because the country is too crazy right now, and it just seems like America is a crazy place. And I had to have a heart-to-heart with her about, even though that seems to be the case, and this job happened to be in New York, that, you know, New York is, you wouldn't feel that on a day-to-day basis. Especially this week when it was 78 degrees and everybody was out drinking, and it was beautiful.
You just see the incongruity, though, of like watching something about a war or something terrible happening on the news, and then being like, a bottle of rosé. Like, it is like...
No,
there is some incongruity in her life.
Yeah, absolutely. But
mind-blowing.
Right, but you know, it's now like another recruiting challenge that companies have to deal with. Forget about we've talked about, you know, the difficulties of not being able to forecast and other economic challenges. I mean, this war has created crazy economic challenges for companies, whether it's the price of oil or supply chain issues or shortages of key, you know, elements of products. This is now another one, like just the sheer madness of America.
The Gulf nowadays, like going in and out of Dubai or all the time, and that is not a thing right now.
Probably not for much longer. You know, but I have British clients who, you know, moved to Dubai to work for hedge funds, to escape, to work tax-free basically. And, you know, they're being moved back to these like random islands in the English Channel to be safe,
Really?
you know, from what's going on in Dubai. Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. So it's a crazy time.
Do you think this is going to permanently impact places like UAE and Dubai that are so invested in Western engagement?
I think it's hard to believe it wouldn't, frankly, because part of their selling point, and I have a lot of family in Dubai and other cities throughout the Middle East, like part of their selling point was like, it's very nice and stable and peaceful here, and there's no crime and there's nothing to, you know, worry about, and that's just out the window.
Is sticking to no crime, but.
Yeah, but by the way, we don't even know the extent of damage in these countries because the media is so tightly controlled by the government. So like the damage is much worse than we actually even know. There's nightly bombing in these countries.
Yeah. Nobody's getting any sleep.
Nobody's sleeping. American planes are being hit on bases in Saudi Arabia. I mean, we're only getting part of the picture. And so people will have to reassess, and these countries will, to the extent they already offered incentives like tax-free life, what are you going to do beyond that
How are you gonna
to attract? Yeah, that's going to be tough.
All right. Let's get another serious one out of the way, and then we can talk about the lack of joy, which amuses me. UPenn. What in the ever-loving God is going on? What is this EEOC request for records of all of the Jewish students at Penn? This never goes well for my people.
Yeah, I think I will say I have a lot of problems with what the EEOC is doing here, the underlying investigation. But I will say some of the reporting on this is misleading. Not too far off like what actually has happened, but the EEOC is the agency charged with enforcing our federal anti-discrimination laws. And you could either go to them with a complaint, like my employer is discriminating against women, or it's great. He's really great.
It's great.
Or the EEOC on its own could say, we see a systemic problem and we're going to address it and we're going to investigate the companies involved in this systemic problem. Now, typically, it's been on major issues like pay equity, gender discrimination, pregnancy discrimination, etc. In this case, the EEOC said UPenn is not protecting its Jewish workers from harassment and other hostile behavior. And so this was really started, and the jurisdiction of the EEOC is over employees, not students. So what they did is they filed this complaint against Penn. And then as part of their investigation, they requested lists of all Jewish employees so that they could talk to them and learn whether they were harassed or not and whether Penn took steps to protect them or not. And then they also asked for employees involved with Jewish-type organizations. And, Penn challenged these subpoenas from the EEOC and said, this is dangerous. There are known people in the administration who have views against Jews. If this information ends up in the wrong hands, bad things could happen, etc. And a number of the groups and a number of Jewish organizations filed, amicus briefs in this. But the judge ruled that the EEOC is entitled to this information. It's routine that they would do these investigations and talk to people.
So they are getting student names too?
Well, it shouldn't be student names. It's just employees. So it shouldn't be students. And so that's why the reporting that's not what the subpoenas were for. But to the extent that, there are a lot of students who work for schools. So they would be flagged. So there would be students flagged, but it's not all Jewish students. But that's what's going on. Whether this is an appropriate use of EEOC resources, I don't think so. And, whether this is still a major problem at UPenn, I don't know. From what I heard, it's one of the toughest schools to get into still these days. So I don't know.
There were, though, I like to point out, 9% less international applicants this year.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure the number's higher. I'm sure the number will be higher. So that's what's going on. And look, if you're an employer,
Jewish enrollment in all Ivies, other than Brown, I think, is down. So people are making decisions with their feet.
Yeah, and they'll continue to do that. But at the same time, we see a trend where it's not going to be dictated by these things. We also see a trend where law firms, investment banks, consulting firms, as part of the movement away from DEI, are going back to these elite colleges and saying, we want students from the Ivies. And that's where we're doing all our early recruiting. And, you better be there. Otherwise, you're going to have to make double the case for us to hire you. And so that's the counter trend that's happening. So maybe we saw a dip last year, but I doubt that will be the case over the next couple of years.
Interesting. Let's
with
watch
respect
that.
to those schools.
Yeah, let's watch that. That's interesting. Um, okay. Now, there was a big article in the Wall Street Journal that joy is dead in the workplace. That people go to work and they say, this just sucks. There's no joy anymore. It's like they're trying to get us to do the most work possible for the least resources, which is often what a workplace is for, people. I can't help but think,
That's
in the immortal words of Don Draper, that's what the money is for. And listen, I am a real work hard, play hard girl. Like, I like a fun workplace, but I don't, like, everyone's jobs are being eliminated, and you're like, coffee's not good. I don't know.
Coffee's not free.
Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, for some people, there was never joy in the workplace. I mean, that's why you and I have our own workplaces, right?
Exactly.
And many others. I mean, self-employment is a huge driver,
We were
a growth
lucky
driver in
enough
the economy.
to work in an industry that embraced joy when it had money, and we were there for it.
Yeah, and this article talked about some things that I've heard from clients, which are like perks and all those things. You're expected to be back in the office more than ever, and at a lot of companies, not all. There's still, let me be clear, there are still some companies that do an incredible job with perks and office comforts and efforts to support employees in the office. So I want to be clear about saying that. But there are other companies that make plenty of money and also find the need to take out any belt tightening on the employees. So they're ending perks like this article talked about, Dell cutting free coffee for employees, okay?
I have to say, just stupid.
Yeah. My experience with that company is very consistent with how they operate, which is it's not that employee friendly, frankly, in my opinion.
I think it used to be.
Yeah, and they have plenty of money, by the way. Plenty of money. It's not a money
Speaking
issue.
of companies with plenty of money, Oracle, which, if we all remember how much money Larry Ellison made earlier this year or last year, what was it? Oracle is
Gajillion dollars?
bajillions of dollars, like enough money that he could,
I mean, the guy owns an island in Hawaii. So.
give, change off his carpet to his son to buy CBS, basically.
Right.
And now Warner Brothers, dear Lord. But how many people did they lay off, and what was the heartwarming note that they got?
Well, earlier this week, Oracle, which has 162,000 employees worldwide, laid off somewhere between 20 and 30,000. We don't have the exact number, by email sent at 6 a.m. Eastern time, so with no prior warning, no notice, with a message that said, after careful consideration of Oracle's current business needs, we have made the decision to eliminate your role as part of a broader organizational change. As a result, today is your last working day. And the people who got this email, probably shortly before they woke up or upon waking up, locked out of their computers, couldn't go to the office, couldn't say goodbye to their colleagues, couldn't get their stuff, couldn't retrieve personal items off their computers, couldn't have 2 weeks notice. It's incredibly callous and disgusting, frankly. And it's because, they claim it's because, or analysts claim it's because they're taking on a lot of debt to build out further AI capability. Mm-hmm. I think if anyone should have been fired, really, it should be the CEOs, frankly. If you have the ability to just fire 30,000 people in one day by email, that means you're not running the company correctly. So maybe you're the ones who should be fired. And
I think this is part of your ongoing disbelief that AI is actually taking jobs.
It's not. AI can't take 30,000 jobs in one day. I mean, that's crazy. It's not because of AI taking the jobs. It's because of them reallocating resources within their company. And what I'm really concerned about,
the layoffs we're in?
They're all across the company, and they're not just junior employees. I mean, so I was just reading a post from a 16-year manager there.
Saw that.
Yeah. But what I'm really concerned about, what this is a greater sign of, and I think the administration plays a large role in this by just taking all accountability off companies, is that companies are just treating their employees like numbers on a balance sheet. They don't have no concern for the human beings, their families, their careers, their well-being. Again, I'm not saying every company acts this way. A lot don't. But like this behavior is so outrageous, and it should be the top story everywhere. And frankly, it could have some really bad consequences. I mean,
why be so shitty?
Yeah, why be so shitty? Exactly.
What are the
And are you going to say these 30,000 people were such a threat to their colleagues? They couldn't even go in. They couldn't be told in person. I mean, it's just crazy. So hopefully the two co-CEOs will be fired as part of this, because obviously there was an amount of incompetence there. If you had 30,000 extra employees, why are you continuing in your job?
The CEOs are not going to be fired.
They should be.
Okay, but they're not going to be.
But I want them to be.
Okay. That's lodged. I have a question.
Noted.
I have a friend that got laid off this week. Her position got changed or eliminated, and she has to still negotiate everything. And she was like, I want them to keep it quiet for another month or so while I'm like finishing up.
You mean not announce it to the rest of the team and the clients?
Yeah.
And things like that?
Uh-huh. And the boss wants her to stay also for like to finish up a few things. And she was asking me, does she have any leverage to have the boss keep it quiet?
Sometimes. It's really going to depend on the company's needs. And if it's a situation where someone is continuing to do their job, then they should. You know, she could always say like...
She thinks she won't be able to be effective in what she is still expected to do.
Right. Yeah, so I've had clients in that situation, and, you know, if the company refuses to play ball on that point, you know, you could always say, well, I'm going to stop working. Now, as long as it doesn't jeopardize your severance, that's maybe some leverage you could use in that situation. But generally, the employee does not have a ton of leverage in that situation, unless they're doing something really essential in the transition that the company needs. And if the company's firing someone in the middle of something like that, then they're just stupid.
Yeah. Okay. Helpful. That's interesting. Good to know.
Yeah. Like just wait until it's over and then do it. Right.
Okay. Do you think joy is dead in the workplace? Let's come back to that for 1 second.
I do hear that a lot. I have to be honest. I mean, I work primarily with C-suite people, and it's a very tough time to be an employee, but it's a very tough time to be a manager and executive too.
People have to figure out how to make their own joy in their day. Like whatever, it's not going to come from the company, unfortunately.
Well, I always tell people it shouldn't be the exclusive source. Your happiness should not depend on work, but it is a big part of people's lives, and you know it does.
Yeah. But like, you should be aware of it if that is draining on you and find ways to solve for it. Like, say I'm going to spend a little bit more money on work lunches and a little bit less money on something else because I need to like have a fun lunch, or like find ways to keep yourself emotionally engaged, or you'll check out and find yourself without a job if you're miserable.
Well, yeah. And I think companies need to acknowledge or be aware of the fact that it's like more difficult for employees to do those kind of things now. I mean, everything is more expensive. Yeah. And then, you know, like I'll give you one example. Like one way people try and take the pressure off is take time off and travel, you know, and we're coming up on summer and people plan summer trips.
Travel's a mess.
I mean, travel's a mess right now.
And
you know, and it's super expensive because of jet fuel and reduced routes and whatever because of the war. So like, look, if you're a company, you really should be going in the opposite direction to try and support your employees during these difficult times rather than put more pressure on them, you know.
And everyone should always remember the study that people are shown to do much more work and a better job at work when they have a best friend at work.
Your favorite study. I'm sure it's like...
Studies.
I think it's probably framed on that bookshelf behind you somewhere, probably very prominently displayed.
My cover from when I left is framed, and it someplace says, "One woman's secret grief. I found out I wasn't LB's only work wife." And it was compared to her line.
That's great. That's great.
Because I did have several work wives.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right. So heroes and zeros, right? Is that where we are?
Are we at that point in things? I think we are.
Everybody's favorite segment. Who's your zero? You got one?
My zero is, oh man, there are a lot of things right now, but that whole looks maxing thing is absurd.
Oh,
Uh,
clavicular.
yeah, everywhere. And it is the most male thing I've ever seen because it's just like making vanity like macho by like putting extra consonants in. And it's just people like being like, I'm vain.
Yeah,
And that's called like
like
look
mostly disgusting people.
yeah.
I mean, that
And
guy's like racist and all that stuff. It's
awful.
bad.
What
Yeah.
is wrong with people? What is wrong with people?
Well, I mean, I actually heard a great analysis of it yesterday. I mean, part of it is like this engineering to target, men who are lonely and,
I mean, there's a
inject
record
them with
line
these,
in Incellandia.
yeah, and inject like these crazy routines, put these crazy routines on these people to keep them lonely so they keep watching this content. I mean, if you like have to do the things these guys tell you to do, like you basically have no life. I mean, you can't do them with anyone in your life. They wouldn't tolerate that shit.
Ooh, them.
Yeah, it's horrible. I guess there's a really good documentary about it. I haven't seen it, but
Yes.
I kind of do.
I want to see that, and I want to see the Manosphere documentary. Have you watched that yet?
No,
By
but I do not participate in either, so I only hear about them.
We need to understand it more. All right, what's your
Okay.
zero?
Well, my zero is sports related. It happened right after we recorded last week, so I'll say Tiger Woods is my zero for,
Oh
I
my
mean, it's kind of
God.
old at this point, but actually just before we came on, the body cam footage was
Yes.
released from his arrest.
Lunch. Yeah.
And, he tried to blame flipping a giant Range Rover on looking at his phone, which is kind of hard to believe.
Yikes.
But, it's very, on the one hand, it's very sad that Tiger obviously has some dependency problems that he needs to figure out. But on the other hand, like, I'm very angered that he's so irresponsible. Hire a driver and don't
Hire a
put the
driver.
public in danger. It's like,
Do like the rest of us. Call an Uber.
well, I mean, Tiger Woods is not going to call an Uber. I understand that. But it's really one of my,
I don't
like, major pieces of advice over the years. Like,
Don't drive
every athlete or celebrity should have a driver. Period.
Yeah.
Done.
Just take that out of the equation.
Just take it out of the equation. Exactly. So shame on you, Tiger.
My hero.
Yes.
My heroes are going to be the ads that the Democrats are going to make with President Trump's speech. I think it was yesterday or earlier today, where he said, we're not going to pay for daycare. We've got two big wars that we're doing. I mean, talk about an ad
Thoughtful.
rating itself. You people elected this man because he said he was going to keep you out of war and is all about pro-family, pro-natalist, pro-kids.
Pro-family.
Making fun of the idea of childcare because of the wars. So I guess, I know it's a flip to make this a win, but we are going to win with the ads that we are going to make using that quote.
It's great. So that's like more of a prospective hero. Like
Yes.
something that will be heroic if the Democrats could
That's a great hero quote that we'll
just
be able to use.
use their common sense and run that ad. Okay, great. I hope it happens. My hero, which should be, by the way, you asked me before why Pam Bondi was fired today. And I think the most cynical answer I could give you is because of my heroes, the astronauts on Artemis 2, who took off yesterday. And it was an incredible launch, very moving.
Very cool.
The
First
speeches, the operational control woman she was amazing. I think that was the first time it was a woman also.
Yeah.
But I bet you the big guy's a little jealous they're getting all this attention, would love to. So that would be the third reason yesterday was a bad day for him. But let's not detract these astronauts.
You and Challenger happened.
I was in chorus class. That was terrible.
I was
But
watching I Dream of Jeannie, and Major Nelson was going on a mission in that.
it was a school day. Why were you at
I was
home?
sick. I was homesick.
Oh.
So I was watching I Dream of Jeannie, because that's what you did when you were homesick in the 80s.
Great show. Great
Really
show.
good show. And Major Nelson and Major Healy were going on some sort of expedition, and then it broke in with news about the Challenger. And I was like, I thought it was part of the show. Like,
Oh,
and then I realized it wasn't. Yeah.
it's tough to watch that by yourself.
So, yeah. That's why we're all
But
by Gen X is feral. Go on. Sorry.
yeah, good. Yeah, that's the second time that's come up on this podcast. That's funny. Yeah, so like it's not an easy mission. I mean, they're basically whipping around the moon, longest distance ever traveled in space. So it'll be fascinating to watch if we could have 5 seconds of not focusing on the president to freaking watch it. So
It's true.
they are my heroes.
You know what? That's a good one. Go astronauts.
Yeah,
Space travel, especially not privately funded space travel.
that's right.
Yeah,
All right,
like this
we
is
made it.
We made it. Looks like we made it.
We
Chag
made it.
Sameach to everybody who is celebrating Passover. Happy almost Easter.
Yeah, happy Passover. Happy almost
Sozo,
Easter.
all it is. Yes.
All the things. All
Yep.
the things. And thank you, Sadie, for producing and editing, and everybody for watching and listening. And we'll see you next week on Across the Bar. Bye.